Some things happen without explanation. Some experiences haunt people for a lifetime. This is where I tell those mysteries. And remember, not everything can be explained. Story. I've been trying to leave my bathroom for the past 30 minutes. I can't leave my bathroom. About 30 minutes ago, I got out of the shower and dried off, put on my PJs, opened the door and walked out, only to find myself back in my bathroom, staring at the closed door. I stopped and tried to rationalize what had just happened to me. I convinced myself that I had simply imagined that I had opened the door and stepped out, so I tried again. I pushed the door handle down, opened it, stepped out, and yet again found myself in my bathroom, standing in front of a closed door. This has happened every single time I've tried to leave. I keep my phone in the bathroom with me when I'm showering. I live alone, so I keep it with me just in case, for safety. The first thing I did was call my parents. My dad didn't pick up, but my mom did. I tried to explain the situation to her, but she couldn't seem to understand how I was trapped in my bathroom if the door could open. She seemed convinced that I must mean that my bathroom door's lock was broken and I was trapped inside. Regardless, she said that she would be over as soon as possible. She only lives a 15-minute drive away, so she should be here any moment. I'm sat leaning against my bathtub, looking out the open bathroom door into my landing. I opened it this time, but didn't try to step out. Everything looks normal. My bedroom door is closed just as I left it. The airing cupboard door closed as well. The stairs leading down to the hallway and the front door, all normal. The door's shut. I don't have any recollection of how it's shut, when it shut, only that it must have happened in the last few seconds after I wrote that last paragraph. I've just reread that paragraph. It's proof that I'm not going crazy and imagining this. My mom just texted me to ask if I'm in the house. I said yes, of course I am. I'm trapped in the bathroom. That's the whole reason that I called you here. This is what she has sent. Mom, why aren't you saying anything? Me, what do you mean? Mom, are you even in there? Me, yes, I'm in here. Are you here? Mom, I'm outside the bathroom door. I've been calling your name. I don't understand. I can't hear anything through the door. I'm going to open it. I can see my landing, my stairs, my front door, but no Mom. I tried to walk out, but it was fruitless, back staring at the closed bathroom door. My mom tried the handle of the door from her side, but it won't open. She brought tools to unscrew the lock. She says she's doing it now, but I can't hear anything, and I can't see the handle moving. Okay, Mom texts me to say the lock is taken out, but the door still won't open on her side. She looked through the circular hole in the door where the lock was, but just saw my bathroom. Empty. There's no hole on my side of the door. The handle and lock are intact. I have no idea what's happening, or how I can get out. After much convincing my mom that I am in fact in here, she said she is calling someone to possibly knock the door down. I'm worried that once they do that, they will find an empty bathroom, and yet I will still be here, trapped in my bathroom. There's no plug sockets in here, never mind my phone charger. My phone will die at some point. I'm already on 24%. When it runs out, I might lose my only point of contact with the rest of the world. I don't know what to do. Mom's left now to get help. I'm sat wondering what I can do. I tried to break the door down myself. I knew it wouldn't work, but I had to try. I remember reading once on Reddit that you shouldn't use your shoulder. You should try to kick the door by the lock because it's the weak point. It didn't work. I'm not sure any part of this door has a weak point now. The window is small, and I'm not sure if I'd actually be able to fit out of it. Scratch that. The window won't open either. There are locks on the windows in my house. You can lock them with a little key, but I never received any when I moved in, so I've never been able to lock them. It's locked now, though. It's got one of those white plastic cheap blinds covering it. I ended up ripping it down. It's pulled some plaster down with it, but now I can get at the window better. It's straight above the toilet, so I am kneeling on top of the toilet lid, yanking at the window handle. It won't. Wait. It opened. I didn't notice how dark it was outside. It shouldn't be dark, it's midday. I looked around, desperately trying to see anyone. No one's around. Everything looks kind of muted. I can't describe it. Nor can I describe the deep-seated feeling of dread and wrongness as I look out into my neighborhood. My instincts are telling me not to, but I stick my head out to look down to where I could possibly drop to. My window's closed. I never felt myself move, but my window's closed. Even the fucking plastic blind is back in place. I'm sat on the floor now, as far away from the window and door as I can get. I feel sick. Mum came back, along with her work friend. He helped her unscrew the hinges and remove the door. I'm not in there. They can't see me. My mum sent a photo of her inside the bathroom, with no me. She thinks this has all been a joke, and is refusing to reply to my texts or answer my calls. I'm on 14% battery. I don't know if I will ever get to leave. This might be my only chance to say goodbye to my mum, but she won't answer her phone. Edit. I've ripped down the shower curtain, and yet I'm staring at it right now, hung up, hanging over the side of my bath. I looked out the window again. I think I heard a rumbling. Low, quiet rumbling. I haven't opened the window since. My phone's on 1%. If I get out, I will update this post. If no edit comes, assume I'm still here. Story. After 2 years, I finally read my dad's suicide note. I really should have read it sooner. I took a deep breath to stop the slight shaking in my hand, whispering my affirmation on the exhale. I'm ready for this. I'm ready, before sliding the blue-lined notebook paper out from its envelope. It was finally ready to read my dad's suicide note. It took me almost 2 years to get to this point of acceptance and readiness. 2 years ago, I was known as a bright, energetic girl who was ready to take on the world. Having just finished high school as the class valedictorian, I was following in my father's footsteps and received a full-ride scholarship to his alma mater, where I would also compete nationally on the women's track team. All of this was possible thanks to the support of my favorite person in the world, my dad. Growing up, as far back as I can possibly remember, it was just me and Dad. He had told me that my mother had given in to her drug addictions and walked out when I was still an infant. He always told me I looked just like her, which I can verify by the pictures he showed me. That being said, he never was able to find her. Nobody knows if she is even alive. My dad didn't hesitate to be the perfect dad, regardless of losing my mother. You and I, we're a team, he always told me. Together, there's nothing that we can't handle. And that was true. Every day, he'd take me to school and head straight to work, just to come home and shuttle me to all of my extracurriculars, and still make time to help me do my homework and studying. Okay, so sometimes he forced me to do my homework, but it always got done before bed. Dad was genuinely my best friend. Our bond was something most other girls just couldn't understand, as they constantly fought and argued with their fathers. Not me, though. We were a team. There was nothing that we couldn't handle. That is until there was no we anymore. That weekend, we spent all Saturday moving my things into my new college dorm. I remember that day like it was yesterday. We talked and laughed all day as we unpacked and set up furniture together. We could only avoid the inevitable for so long, though, as night fell and Dad still had a 3-hour drive home. Finally, we both broke into tears as we said our goodbyes. Remember, we're a team, he told me, choking back his tears. Together, there's nothing we can't handle. I finished for him, and with that, he climbed into his pickup and drove off. I cried myself to sleep, thinking about how I had never gone more than a day without seeing my dad, and now I was supposed to live on my own. I woke up early the next day, still wearing my jeans from moving day. Realizing that I hadn't stayed up to get the text from my dad ensuring he made it home safely, I picked up my phone to check for his text, but naturally, the battery was dead. I connected the charger and got the coffee pot started while I waited for my phone to charge. By the time I got back to my bedroom, the phone had enough juice to turn on. I put in my passcode and went straight to the messaging app, but there was no message from Dad. I immediately had a bad feeling about that. It seemed so unlike him to not send the message when he got home. My mind started jumping to all of the what ifs. What if he had been in an accident? What if he was in the hospital, or worse? I called, hoping he would pick up the phone and calm my anxiety, but the call went straight to his cheery but sarcastic voicemail he hadn't changed in years. "This is Darren. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me a message and I'll probably call you back, but no guarantees. Hey Dad, this is Aaron. Sorry, I fell asleep. Just wanted to know you got home okay. Call me. Love you. I'm sure he just fell asleep and hasn't got up yet. I told myself out loud. I continued to try and reassure myself that nothing was wrong, but it didn't help. I just couldn't quash that feeling that something was wrong. An hour had passed, then 2, then 3. I must have called at least a dozen times, but every call had the same result. Straight to voicemail. By the time it was noon, I knew something had to be wrong, very wrong. If my dad slept until 7:30 a.m., that was sleeping in for him, even on a Sunday. I did the next thing I could think of and called my Uncle Dan, who lives only 25 minutes away. Hey, Uncle Dan, sorry to bother you, but have you heard from my dad? He never called to say he was home last night, and well, he hasn't answered his phone. Oh, I'm sure he's fine. He's probably just sleeping in. He's an empty nester now, or maybe he's just working on that old Camaro. Maybe he'll finally get it running, Dan said with a chuckle. Look, I said, while pacing my room, somewhat annoyed by his lack of concern. Can you just please do me a favor and go check on him? I'd love to, but I'm at the lake right now, having myself a nice quiet fishing trip. But tell you what, if you haven't heard from him by later this afternoon, I'll stop by on my way home and smack him for you. All right, thanks, Dan, I said before hanging up, not even trying to hide my disappointment. I couldn't understand how Dan could just blow off the fact that Dad hasn't called me. I knew my dad better than anybody, and this wasn't normal. I called the highway patrol next and asked them if there had been any accidents involving a 2006 Chevy Silverado. Thankfully, there had been none. After that, I called the local police for my dad's city, asking them to file a missing persons report or to do a wellness check. They blew me off the same way Uncle Dan did, telling me that he's an adult and has no obligation to check in with his teenage daughter, and recommended that I wait a couple of days. By 2 p.m., still, with no phone call and nobody that would take me seriously, I grabbed the keys to my dainty maroon sedan and started driving. I drove fast. I couldn't help it, but I made it home in just 2.5 hours, cutting 30 minutes off the usual 3-hour drive. I felt my heart speed up and hit a little harder as I pulled into my neighborhood, anxious to get some answers. As the garage door opened, I could see the Chevy Silverado in the garage, next to the rusty old Camaro with parts and tools scattered about. Feeling a little relieved, I took a deep breath in and let my chest push the air back out. Dad, I called out as I walked through the door. His keys, wallet, and cell phone all lay in place on the old, beat-up brown shelf next to the door. Dad, Arkansas EU home? There was still no answer as I peeked out into the backyard. It seemed as though the home I'd known my whole life had never been so quiet. It was usually filled with the sounds of conversations, laughter, music, or the sound of sports playing in the living room. Tonight, however, the silence of the house was so muted that each stair creak sounded like the house was moaning in pain, as if it was being forced to tell a dark secret. Dad, I called out, a little softer this time, scared to disturb the leering silence. I gave his bedroom door a soft knock, then twisted the doorknob and pushed lightly, encouraging it to slowly open with a drawn-out, squealing creak. That's where I found him. The first thing I noticed was the blood. The headboard of his bed had a deep red, almost black in the middle, spatter of blood. It looked as if someone had filled a large water balloon with blood and launched it at the headboard. The splatters of blood projected upwards from the headboard, leaving long streaks of blood up the wall and even onto the ceiling. Laying on the bed was my father, thankfully slumped in a way that I could not see his head and face. Next to him, I could see the deep brown woodstock of his 12-gauge shotgun. This is an image I can't get out of my mind. The harder I try to not think about it, the more I think about it. It haunts me, every day and every night. I frequently have nightmares, where I watch a dark figure place a shotgun to my dad's head and pull the trigger, sending blood and brain matter flying throughout the room. I always try to stop it from happening, but I'm unable to move. That evening, I experienced what shock truly is. It's as if the part of my mind that controls how rational people should act simply broke. I know I called 911, I know I told them someone was dead, but I barely remember anything else from the ensuing events until the funeral. and the time the detective told me that my father's death had been ruled a suicide. Detective Tilly was her name. I always kept her card in my nightstand. She handed me a Ziploc bag. Inside was an off-white envelope that was once sealed, but had carefully been opened. On the outside, written in black ink, my name was written. "It's addressed to you," Detective Tilly said. "We had to process it for evidence, but the case is closed, and this belongs to you." The next thing she handed me was her card, with a soft touch on my shoulder and a promise that I could call any time, under any circumstance. Over the following 18 months, my life can only be described as an absolute mess. I was hospitalized twice, not for physical injuries, but psychiatric ones. I would simply forget to eat, and ended up severely underweight. Another time, I was apparently found by police walking down the highway at night, barefoot, wearing only shorts and a t-shirt. I don't remember that, but needless to say, I did not end up following through with college. When I wasn't an inpatient, I stayed with my Uncle Dan and Aunt Molly, who kindly took me in and handled basically all of the affairs. Over the past 6 months, thanks to the help of Uncle Dan, Aunt Molly, my psychiatrist, and my therapist, I've made progress enough to finally start feeling like a normal person again. I'd been weaned to low dosages of the pills that help me sleep, and my therapist and I had decided that I was finally in a place where I could, and should, read the suicide letter addressed to me. "Aaron, I want you to know that I'm sorry, and that none of this is your fault. Ever since your mother's death, the only thing that brought me happiness was being your dad. Now that you are off on your own, I don't feel as if I have any reason to live. I love you. Dad, asterisk." I paused, staring at the words, letting them sink in. My fist slammed on the desk before I even realized I was angry, knocking my pen holder over. I grabbed the pen holder and threw it across the room. I heard it crack on the wall, followed by pens and pencils landing in every which direction. "What the fuck?" I said out loud, as my sight blurred slightly from the accumulating tears. This letter was supposed to provide me with closure, not more questions. What did he mean by my mother's death? My father had always told me that she left, and he didn't know what happened to her after that. And why is it that he couldn't continue to be my dad after I left college? I took a deep breath in through my nose and pushed the air out through my lips. I took a couple more deep breaths until I had composure over myself. I started picking up the pens that I had thrown everywhere. They were all the blue-capped ballpoint pens, the only pens I would write with. That habit was one of the many that I picked up from my dad. That's when the oddity of the note struck me, something I hadn't thought of until now. The note was written in black pen. My dad only ever wrote with blue pens, as if he had some sort of paranoia with using any other ink. I rushed back to the note and looked at it more intently. The black ink on the paper didn't seem right, and not just the color, but the lettering as well. I rushed to the closet and pulled out the old orange shoebox that contained every card my dad had ever left me. On top was the card he had given me along with my graduation gift. On the top front, written in blue ink, was my name. I placed it next to the suicide note written with black ink. It was different. The handwriting was close, but different. My dad wrote the E in Aaron with straight lines and sharp points on the graduation card, but on the suicide note, the back of the E was curved. There were other small differences as well, such as how on the note, the handwriting was slightly more slanted than on the cards my dad had given me. Over the next few hours, I pulled out every single card and analyzed the handwriting, comparing it with the suicide note. The more I read, the more I became convinced that the suicide letter was written by someone else, but who? Was my dad murdered? I approached Dan as soon as he got home, holding the letter in my hand. "Dan, there's something that I'd like to talk to you about," I said, standing in the doorway of his office with my free hand anxiously pulling at my hair. "What can I do for you, Aaron?" Dan replied with a smile, but still looking down at his computer. "My dad's suicide note," I read it. "It says here that my mother died, but my dad said that she left and he never knew what happened to her. I'm just confused." For a moment, just a small moment, a look of surprise came over Dan's face, as if he'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Just as quickly as it appeared, that expression left and was replaced with a kind, caring look. "I'm sorry, honey. I don't know much about your mother, only met her a few times myself. He paused for a minute to remove his reading glasses and set them on his desk. I'm sorry to say this, but I think it's also fair to say that there were a lot of things your dad kept to himself. I wish he'd opened up about his struggles. We all do. Okay, I'm sorry to bother you, I said, starting to walk away. Hey, don't leave yet. Is there anything else that is bothering you? Well, the thing is, I trailed off and looked down at the ground. I didn't know how to say it, that I thought my dad was murdered. I started doubting myself and was worried that after all of the problems I've had that I might sound crazy. It's okay, Aaron, you can tell me. I don't think my dad wrote the note. It's not his handwriting. It doesn't match. I spat out. Aaron, Dan said, sounding clearly disappointed. I thought we had this all behind us. Did you take your meds today? Yes, I took. I'll call Dr. Z first thing tomorrow. We don't need you to have another mental break. I'm sure the therapist can get you in for an emergency session as well, he said while scribbling down some notes on his post-it stack. You know what? You're right. I'm overthinking this all. I'm just going to go get some rest. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and hurried into my room, closing and locking the door behind me. Deep breaths, I thought to myself. Deep breaths. I took a few moments to compose myself before sitting down on my chair. I unclenched my hand, letting the old post-it note that I had swiped off Dan's desk fall onto mine. The note said, "Pick up prescription for Aaron." The E was written with a curved backline. I placed it next to the alleged suicide note. The handwriting from Dan's post-it note was a dead match. Dan wrote this suicide note, not my dad. Hours passed while I sat at my desk, staring at the notes, grasping the new reality of the situation. A dozen thoughts crossed through my mind as to what might have happened, what role Dan had played in my father's death. Molly had knocked on my door and tried to coax me out for dinner. I declined, saying that I needed some rest. My therapist called too. Undoubtedly, he had received a call from Dan. I ignored his call, thinking Dan was trying to make me think I'm crazy. What are you hiding, Dan? I asked myself. It was 11 p.m., and I was sure Dan and Molly had gone off to bed. I pulled out that old business card that I had kept for the last 2 years. On the top, in blue handwriting, the card read, "Tamitha Tilley, Detective." I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the number, hoping that she would pick up. Listening to the tone, I couldn't help but think about that day 2 years ago, trying to call my dad, not knowing he was already dead, laying on his bed with his brains splattered across the wall. "This is Detective Tilley." The voice startled me. I had been so lost in that horrific memory that I forgot about the present. "Hello, is anybody there?" Detective Tilley asked from the other end of the line. "Yeah, sorry, my name is Aaron Mills. 2 years ago, you worked my dad's case, Darren Mills?" "I remember you, yeah," she said, in a kind voice with a hint of sadness. "Some cases are hard to forget. How are you?" she asked. "Well, I'm a little freaked out," I said, feeling comforted by the openness of Detective Tilley's warmth. "The thing is, I started to pace the floor, not really sure how to say it." "Go ahead, Aaron. What can I do for you?" Detective Tilley encouraged. "I know it's been 2 years, and I know this probably sounds crazy, but I've just read my father's suicide note, and it's not his handwriting. He didn't write it." There was a pause of silence from the other end of the line. "Are you sure?" Detective Tilley asked. "Yes, and I've compared it to my uncle's handwriting, and it looks exactly like his. I know how this sounds, but—" "I believe you," Detective Tilley said before I could finish. "Look, if you're right about this, we need to get ahead of the situation now. Where are you? I can come pick you up, bring the note and your uncle's handwriting sample, and we'll look at this together." It felt so good to hear her say that she believed me. It had been so long since somebody truly believed in me, instead of treating me like some sort of head case. "Okay, I live at redacted 30X Street," I told her, already grabbing some clothes from my closet with my free hand. "But I'll probably have to sneak out. This is my Uncle Dan's house, and when I said something to him about the note, he got really weird." "Oh shit. Aaron, you need to get out of there. I'm already on my way. Keep me on the line. Get out of that house, walk down the street, then start talking to me and I'll pick you up." "Okay," I said. "I'll talk to you in a few," before slipping the phone into my pocket, with Detective Tilley still on the line. I quietly slipped my Vans on and grabbed a backpack with my computer, phone charger, and a set of spare clothes, along with a folder containing the suicide note, writing samples from my dad, and the post-it note from Dan, before quietly opening the door and stepping out. Going somewhere? I jumped a mile at the sound of Dan's voice and almost fell over while my heart punched my chest from the inside. "Dan, hey," I said, trying and failing to hide the obvious fact that I was caught red-handed by the man that may have murdered my dad. "I was just going for a walk." "With your backpack?" Dan said immediately, taking a step forward. I took a step backward at the same time. "Yeah, just in case I get hot and need to take my jacket off." Dan took another step forward, and I took another step backward to keep out of arm's reach. "Look, we just want to keep you safe. You've made so much progress, we don't need another regression. Why don't you hand over the note so we can get past this?" His suggestion sounded more like a demand, and it occurred to me that he had probably been listening to my conversation with Tilly. He took another step forward, and I took another step backward. "No," I said. "It's mine, and it belongs to me. You know, you should remember who took you in, and put up with all your psychotic breaks before you go making crazy accusations about the people who care for you." His usually cheerful voice now sounded dangerous and sharp, and he took another step forward. I realized that I was all but cornered. He stood between me and the door. "Give it to me now," he demanded, no longer able to maintain the Mr. Nice Guy facade. He lunged at me. I turned to run, but his hand caught my backpack, ripping me backward. I landed hard on the floor, smacking my head on my chair on the way down. "Get off me," I shouted, and started kicking my feet at him. He ripped the backpack away, but I held onto it with both hands on the straps. He pulled again, even harder, and the seam in the straps started to rip. I remembered what my dad had taught me, if I were ever to be attacked by an evil man, to kick him in the groin. I summoned all of my strength and kicked as hard as I possibly could, placing my lower shin right between Dan's legs. He let go of the backpack and fell to his knees while I fell backward toward the window. "You stupid bitch!" Dan yelled as he started to stand up. I was already pushing the screen out of the window, and just as he rose back to his feet, I jumped out of the window, landing in the bushes 4 feet below. I scrambled to my feet while wiping the blood away from the cut on my forehead created by my collision with the chair. I heard a thud behind me, and turned to see that Dan had already made it through the window. All I could do now was run. I made it about 10 feet away before something hard hit my head. My vision flashed, and the next thing I knew I was on the ground with Dan standing over me, a large rock in his hand. "Drop the rock or I'll shoot." I looked up to see Detective Tilly standing 20 feet away, her pistol drawn and pointed right at Uncle Dan. "Look, this is just a big misunderstanding," Dan said desperately while dropping the rock. "Put your hands on your head and get on your knees," Tilly demanded as she walked forward, pistol still drawn. Dan dropped to his knees while I began to crawl away. "Now lay down on your stomach," Tilly demanded, as she carefully navigated behind him. "She's having a psychological break, she needs help," Dan pleaded, but Tilly ignored him. Instead, she grabbed his head and slammed him into the ground, face first, and proceeded to put him in handcuffs while multiple other police cars arrived. A lot happened in the next few weeks. I spent a couple of days in the hospital, being treated for a serious concussion. Detective Tilly stopped in multiple times to check in on me and keep me updated. The following day, she had the case reopened, to be investigated as a homicide with the suicide note being a key piece of evidence. Dan was arrested that night for assault. Detective Tilly had heard the entire thing over the phone and witnessed him hit me in the head with the rock. When questioned about the homicide, however, he refused to talk and lawyered up. Instead, they turned to interrogate Aunt Molly. It took her less than an hour to crack and confess to everything. As it turns out, it wasn't just my mom who was into drugs. They all were. Aunt Molly, Uncle Dan, even my dad. One night when I was just an infant, things got out of hand while they were using, and my mother overdosed. They didn't want to go to the police, because they would all go to jail, and guardianship of me would have been given to the state. Instead, my dad and Dan disposed of her body and played it off as if she had walked out on us. They all got clean after that, and my dad made it his goal to be the best dad he could be. The night my dad died, my dad admitted to Dan that he couldn't hold on to the secret anymore. Now that I was an adult, he planned to confess to the authorities what had happened 18 years ago. This didn't sit well with Dan, so Dan killed him and made it look like a suicide to keep Molly and himself out of prison. It was a lot to grasp, but ultimately I feel much better finally understanding the truth. I've forgiven my dad and can finally move on with my life and continue to college. I know that, even though he's gone, Dad will always be with me. After all, we're a team, and together, there's nothing that we can't handle. Story: I'm the only woman at my IT job, and now I know why. I was fresh out of college, and desperately looking to start a career that didn't involve serving burgers, wiping down storefront shelves, or bringing stuffy old businessmen their coffee. On average, I was applying to 6 jobs a week, and going to maybe half as many interviews. I knew my major in English wasn't likely to be met with high demand, but I honestly thought my options would prove more promising. Still, I remained optimistic, persevered, and only applied to comfortable office jobs with benefits. It wasn't good for my bank account, but it nourished what little pride I had left. About 3 weeks ago, I had a phone interview with an internet security company. Proficient Technologies had offices all over the country and were looking for a new customer support specialist for their international department. Requirements were a pleasant voice, good spoken and written grammar, some tech knowledge, and the ability to work day and night shifts. The office was only 2 subway stations from my apartment, and they offered health insurance. I applied despite having very vague notions about computer sciences. The phone interview went well, and after 2 more meetings with HR and management, they sent me a very generous offer, considering I was entirely inexperienced. During my first week, I had to work the regular 9 to 5 shift so I could be online at the same time as my manager, who was working from a different city. Afterward, I would work on the regular support schedule, 4-day cycle of 1-day shift, 1 night shift, 2 days off, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. respectively. On my first day, I dressed smartly in a loose sweater and long skirt. Perceptively aware that IT departments are mostly male, I didn't want to draw unnecessary attention by dressing provocatively or inappropriately. The guy at the front desk seemed regular enough. He introduced himself as Tom before helping me fill out some paperwork and guiding me to a desk in the large open-plan workspace. I stared at the countless desks as we walked, finding it difficult to meet the eyes of the men that sat behind them. I saw no other girls in the workspace, which was unusual and somewhat unsettling. Tom's relaxed demeanor could not make up for the immediate hostility aimed at my presence. The air seemed to seep out of the room as I felt my new coworkers chant, "You don't belong here," in silent unison. It surprised me when Tom stopped at a desk that was extensively decorated with printed memes, bright pink floral stickers, and a small tattered teddy keychain that lay behind the monitor. Apart from these artifacts, there was a thick layer of dust coating the keyboard, monitor, and desk space. "Oh, what the actual," Tom muttered angrily. "I'm so sorry," he said, chancing a quick glance down at my papers. "Gemma, this desk was supposed to have been cleared ages ago. I'll have to have a word with the custodian." "Oh, that's all right," I answered. "I could just wipe it down myself, no problem." Tom was skeptical, but a sweeping glance around the room confirmed that there were no other free desks for me to occupy. The rest of the day went by in a haze. I learned about my tasks, which were to answer support-related phone calls and create new tickets in the system. I had to monitor all incoming chats and written tickets, and sort them by level of urgency and type. I wouldn't be required to offer any technical advice, but I had to become well acquainted with the product software. Since I wasn't answering any calls yet, I immersed myself in the manual. I didn't understand a lot of it and spent most of my time Googling networks, black and white box testing, database security, and other things. My manager checked in just before lunch and seemed slightly disappointed by my overall grasp of the material. Feeling like a failure, I took a break to clean the desk. I got up to find Tom and ask him for a cloth for my countertop. I instantly regretted my decision. Every eye in the room was upon me the moment I rose. I couldn't stare back to confirm, but there was a surreal hush as I made my way back down the workspace. The familiar clatter of keyboards had noticeably diminished, As my face grew warm and self-conscious, I noticed myself hunching forward slightly as I walked, a weak attempt at becoming less visible. Before turning off to the passage that led to the front desk area, I dared to meet the eyes of one of the shameless gawkers. I don't know what I was expecting, but the sight of a sneering hooded programmer sent a chill down my spine. He was around my age, but didn't seem the least bit ashamed or uncomfortable by my confrontation. There was a cruel smile playing on his thin lips as he eyed my exposed ankles before turning his attention back to the screens in front of him. I wondered how he would feel if I eyed his long, pimpled neck in the same manner. It was the same as I walked back to my chair with a box of computer wipes. There was some good to come of that day. While I was cleaning the desk drawers, I found a half-used notebook from the previous occupant. She never wrote her first name, only an initial followed by a last name, S. Brooks. However, based on the desk decor, I was sure she was a girl like me. Her discarded belongings provided some comfort, but it was her notebook which proved to be a true treasure. In it, my predecessor had summarized and simplified the entire manual, using easy-to-understand terms and explanations for the daunting terminology and complicated instructions in the manual. With her help, I was able to surprise my manager with my product knowledge at the end of the shift. After a good day's work, I braved the workspace once more to explore the kitchen before heading home. Tom had advertised a top-notch coffee machine and snacks, and I was starving after such an emotionally and intellectually taxing day. Besides, all my credit cards were in the red, and I wanted to fill up on cookies. As I approached, I heard eager chatter coming from the kitchen area, and even some laughter. Foolishly, I hoped that my kitchen-dwelling coworkers would be warmer, more welcoming, or, at the very least, civil. Instead, the small kitchen space fell perfectly silent upon my entrance. There were 5 men of different ages and sizes seated around a cheap-looking cafeteria table, and they were all looking directly at me. "Rough first day?" inquired a sardonic, medium-pitched voice. I lifted my gaze from the floor tiles and scanned the crowd for my addresser. It wasn't difficult to recognize the self-assured hooded figure that had stared me down earlier. "You must be very experienced," he continued snarkily, waving a strand of greasy black hair from his eyes. "To get such a comfortable job, you must be quite the whiz." "What is this, high school?" I blurted out. Now, I'm not usually a confrontational person, but this was honestly too much. Hostility is one thing, social awkwardness another, but this was beginning to feel like a cheesy 80s high school drama with 30-year-old actors playing teenagers. "I'm just here to grab some coffee, and if you doubt my candidacy for this job, you can take your concerns to HR directly," I continued, enjoying the shocked and somewhat nervous faces of my offenders' gang. Good. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the discomfort I had been dealing with all day. Opting to enjoy my snack far away from my coworkers, I walked back to my desk with my head held high and a mug of coffee. Right as I was about to sit and enjoy my frothy treat, I saw I had a text message from a withheld number. "You have quite an attitude, don't you?" I froze, hovering over my desk with the mug in one hand and my phone in the other. As I was attempting to process this grave breach of boundaries, I received 2 more messages within the same chat window. One was a naked photograph that I had sent my first serious college boyfriend. The second read, "Why don't you take that photo to HR?" Obviously, I was deeply unsettled by this invasion of my privacy. The shame crept in, and I felt angry about drawing so much unwanted attention to myself. This was all my fault. I had come to work in an office full of ethical hackers, with a very common dog name as a password. No doubt the photograph had made the rounds thanks to my gross coworker, and I was now the silent laughingstock of the office. Leaving my coffee untouched, I signed off and headed home, holding off the waterworks until I reached the safety of the subway. I couldn't stop crying for most of that night, turning the day's events over in my mind, feeling sick every time I imagined my coworkers leering at my naked body. At around 3 a.m., however, I realized that there was no sense in continuing the pity party. I had to come up with a plan of action if I was going to survive this workplace. Quitting was not an option, because the pay they were offering me was far too good to pass up. Besides, I was literally living off scarcely more than a slice of pizza a day. My second option was going to HR, but there was no way I was going to open that can of worms. I couldn't prove who had sent me those messages. Last option? Stick with it. Keep my head down. Do the job they hired me for, and ignore all further harassment attempts. So that's what I did. Throughout my week of training, I came into work on time, never leaving my desk except to go to the bathroom. I avoided contact with everyone and kept my eyes drawn to inanimate objects only. Thanks to S. Brooks, I kept on top of my training. For every new task from my manager, there was a corresponding entry in her notebook. There were no more horrible texts or face-to-face confrontations, but there was something else that stirred my anxieties afresh. Last Friday was my final day of training, which brought me to the last entry in the notebook. Night Shift Survival Guide. In sleep during the day before shift, and don't fall asleep. Don't let anyone in. Keep pepper spray near. Check every aisle, meeting room. Don't forget to check under desks, balcony, kitchen tables, behind cooler. We have Skype open with credit for emergencies in case of disabled mobile service. Check in with friend, family, lover every hour. The list made little sense. Firstly, HR made it clear that I was allowed to sleep between 2-5 a.m., provided I kept the office smartphone nearby. They even had a pull-out couch in one of the conference rooms for this purpose. Secondly, the entire job was answering calls, so there would always be a way to call from the office phone, right? Lastly, the measures outlined in the guide seemed excessive and paranoid. Perhaps the list was satirical? Maybe this Brooks girl felt just as awkward as I did with all the silent, leering male coworkers? Though my brain worked hard to rationalize this list of precautions, a nagging feeling in my gut told me I was missing something crucial. It came to me as I was leaving work on Friday, my last day of training. Tom, I approached him timidly. Could I ask you a question? Sure thing, he responded, smiling warmly. His pleasant features a far cry from those of the sullen men in the main room. I was just wondering why I haven't seen any of the other customer support agents. I mean, there should be at least another 3 people to cover the 4-day rotation cycle. You have to ask your manager about that. Most likely they're scattered across the country. Pretty normal for that to be the case, he replied, already dismissing me as he went back to his final tasks of the week. Was there an agent who worked here before me? I continued, eager to learn more about the girl that filled the notebook I'd been using all week. Yes, another girl held your position for a short while, Tom said, still looking at his screen, though I noticed he had stopped typing or moving his mouse. He was staring pointedly at a single spot behind his monitor. Tom, I narrowed my eyes. Who is the guy who works at the desk that's just at the turnoff into the main working space? Pale complexion, skinny, dark curly hair, I said, waving a finger at my temple, poorly imitating curly locks. Ah, that's Sam, Tom replied, noticeably attentive to my line of inquiry. Any reason you're asking? Has he been bothering you? No, I said, rather more dismissively than I felt. Have a good weekend, Tom. See ya, he said, watching me questioningly as I left. All weekend I mulled over the events of my first week at work. It felt as though Tom wasn't telling me something important. There was no reason for him to grow so tense at the mention of the girl who had worked there before me. Could someone have complained about Sam before? Could it have been S. Brooks? Was Sam the reason for the survival guide in the notebook? Why did she quit? A million theories disturbed my weekend lounging. Before I knew it, it was time to go back to work. This is where we've almost caught up to present events. Yesterday was Monday, the first regular day shift. It passed in a blur as I frantically answered the phone, recording, sorting, and assigning dozens of customer complaints in our system. It took getting used to, and by the end of the day, I was absolutely exhausted. Just as I was signing off, I received another ominous text from an unknown number. You're such a hard worker. Can't wait to see you take on night shift. Now, this was the first text to fill me with true fear. I quickly looked around to see if Sam was still at work so I could confront him for sending the message, but he had already left for the day. After calming myself down, I headed home and tried to find S. Brooks online. My best bet was LinkedIn, and I looked through all the women that had proficient technologies listed on their profiles. They were suspiciously few. Finding nothing, I looked through Tom's list of friends and finally found what I was looking for. There was a girl by the name of Sierra Brooks listed as unemployed. I sent a friend request with a message introducing myself and asking her if she had ever been harassed by one of her previous coworkers. Finally, feeling like I was getting somewhere, I went to bed and braced myself for the next day's events. I decided there were some upsides to the irregular work schedule when I got to sleep in on Tuesday. I checked my LinkedIn soon after waking up at around 1 p.m. There were no signs of activity from Sierra, so I went about getting ready for my first night shift at the office. I was a little nervous, but mostly excited to get to know my place of work more intimately. Without the day crowd, I was free to walk around the space, binge on cookies, spit in Sam's mug, whatever. There were still a few late workers when I arrived for my shift, but I didn't pay much attention to them as I had a lot of calls and chats to deal with. 2 hours in, however, the stream of calls, chats, and incoming tickets began to wind down until they stopped altogether at around 11 p.m. I leaned back in my chair and surveyed the workspace. There was no one left at the office as far as I could see. All the lights were on, but as I took off my headphones, I heard a low jingling melody playing from somewhere. It sounded like a Christmas carol, but it was hard to tell where it was coming from. There was no reason for this to scare me, but I felt the hairs on my arms prick up in alarm. As I got up from my chair, the melody ceased. Now, I've freaked out over less in the past. I once thought a man was following me at night until he walked right past me to the corner store ahead. Although I lived alone, I'd always double and triple check my locks before bed. I had to admit that my fears were probably unwarranted. Someone had left their headphones connected to their computer with the music turned up. Or maybe there was an office party for a different company downstairs. Hearing music is only scary in strategically written horror flicks, right? Right? Rationalizing aside, I checked the office to make sure I was actually alone. Walking through the aisles of connected desks, I realized how lucky I was to have my secluded corner spot. I might not have been able to handle such close quarters with any of my unpleasant coworkers. Checking all the rows, I went back to the front desk area, lingering over Tom's desk, inspecting his belongings in search of clues. Finding nothing of interest, I went back through the main room to the kitchen. My nerves were already easing up, and I found myself spending more time taste-testing cookies rather than looking for potential fiends behind curtains. I had to stop indulging mid-cookie, however, because the sound of the melody came back while I was in the kitchen, louder this time. At the same time, my work smartphone, which we had to carry around us if we left our post, buzzed with a text message from a random number. Finally got to the cookies, huh? My entire body stiffened as I processed the implications. It was probable that Sam had not left the office and was now screwing with me. I pricked up my ears and listened carefully. There was no one in the kitchen as far as I could see or hear. Also, if Sam was in the main workspace, it wouldn't be difficult to guess that I was eating cookies. Breathing out slowly, I ignored the melody to see if I could hear anything else. Nothing. Slowly, I walked to the kitchen drawers and found a large knife. Did I know how to use a knife? Number? Would my wild jabs ward off an unarmed opponent? Definitely. I was about to head into the workspace when a call came in on the work phone. I positioned myself safely against a kitchen wall, knife in hand, before answering with the standard customer support greeting. There was static on the other end, some clanking noises, followed by complete silence. Glancing at the phone, I saw that it had switched off. I tried to start it up again, but it wouldn't turn on. Great. Now I had to make it back to my computer in case any more calls came in. I remembered Sierra's guide as I was slipping the dead device back in my pocket. We have Skype open with credit for emergencies in case of disabled mobile service. Had this happened to her as well? The instructions in the notebook made a lot more sense, and I cursed myself out loud for being so ill-prepared. As soon as the words escaped my mouth, there was another ominous bing from the phone. I pulled it out and tried to unlock it, but the regular home screen didn't come up. All that came up was a white screen with a short bit of text on it. Tut tut. Ladies really shouldn't use that sort of language. As soon as I read it, the screen cleared and more text appeared. Why don't you come out and play? Don't bother taking that knife with you. It won't do much against my gun. I threw the phone across the room and dashed to my computer. The melody grew louder as I approached my desk, finding a pink stuffed pig toy. There was a fabric button on its left hoof with a music note on it. This was the source of the music and proved without a shadow of a doubt that there was someone else in the office. What's more, they were watching my every move and actively trying to scare me with children's toys. Panic coursed through my body, gearing up for fight or flight. I took a deep breath, attempting to lull my nervous system. So far, I had heard no signs of anyone moving around the office. There were some background city noises coming from outside, and the rhythmic hum of computers that someone forgot to shut off. If my stalker was moving around, I would need to pinpoint their location to plan my escape. Also, I had to get help, fast. Moving the toy aside, I sat down in my chair and pulled up the Skype for Business application. I quickly dialed 911, putting the stationary phone on speaker. The dial tone was brief, and there was a live operator on the other end within moments. I was about to give a very hasty account of events when someone grabbed my ankle from underneath the desk. I screamed hellfire, jerking my leg away and running as fast as my legs could take me. I heard some commotion close behind me, followed by a loud bang, which I interpreted as my assailant giving chase after me. Before I knew it, I was descending the 3 flights of stairs and rushing out the doors past the startled night guard. The freezing air prickled my skin through my thin sweater as I approached a nearby pedestrian for help. They called 911, and the police were at the office space within the hour. As I awaited with the guard for their arrival, I kept thinking of Sierra's written warnings and how stupid I had been to dismiss them. Check every aisle, meeting room. Don't forget to check under desks, balcony, kitchen tables, behind cooler. The police quickly took down my account of events and, leaving me in the care of a young officer, went upstairs to inspect the office. There had been no one coming or going from the building since I ran out, so it was possible that the culprit was still hiding out somewhere inside. The thought made me nauseous, and I shifted closer to my armed companion. Not long after the cops left us, the young officer's radio crackled, and several voices spoke one over the other, asking for backup and naming codes I couldn't understand. Things escalated quickly from there. Instead of going home, I was taken to a police station and held in an interrogation room for hours before someone finally came to speak to me. I was tired, miserable, and confused at the way the events of the night were unfolding. I wanted to go home, but spent several more hours recounting my story to 2 detectives. "So, you had the knife with you when running from the kitchen to your desk?" "Are you sure?" asked the older detective, who had introduced himself as Senior Investigator Barnshaw. Yes, I stammered nervously. "I believe I did. I was panicking, so it's hard to say." "Then there was the pig toy," I said, losing my train of thought. "And you believe the person who was harassing you was Samuel Guilford?" said the other detective, whose name I couldn't remember. He wore no badge. "I don't know his full name, but I can't imagine anyone else is responsible." "And one more time, just for the record, what happened when you dialed 911? asked Barnshaw for the 3rd time that night. "Someone grabbed my leg. My ankle, actually. This happened before I had the chance to explain the situation to the operator. I screamed and ran until I found a stranger outside who let me call for help," I responded, growing weary of the cyclical questioning. "Samuel Guilford was found lying dead not far from your desk when our officers came on the scene. Did you see his body when you were running out of the office?" asked the other detective, feigning an air of innocence while dropping this bombshell. My jaw fell open, and I stared at the interrogators in naked shock and terror. "No," I croaked, "I don't understand." "He was stabbed to death with a large kitchen knife. His body was covered in 23 stab wounds," Barnshaw explained. "And we found the knife wedged in his mouth, pinning him to the floor through his throat. We have reason to suspect it was the knife you've described to us in your statement," added the second detective. I eyed both detectives mutely, straining to focus when my mind seemed to have lost all clarity. "Your story checks out for the most part. We found his phone riddled with amateur hacking apps," continued the senior detective. "We found several naked photographs of you, and all the texts you've mentioned. He had a gun in his hand and we found the bullet he fired as you fled. What we don't understand is how he died," added the second detective, keenly gauging my reaction. "It's okay if you killed him in self-defense, Gemma. The guy was a creep." "I didn't," I stammered. "I swear, I had no idea." Oh God," I cried out helplessly. "I mean, Just a month ago, a report was filed against him by another coworker, said Barnshaw. Sierra, I murmured. You knew Miss Brooks? Asked the second detective, suspicion flaring in his eyes. No, I insisted. I got her desk and her notebook. I should have mentioned it before. What did the report say? Barnshaw scrutinized my face before meeting his partner's eye. Some sort of unspoken exchange took place before they decided to disclose the terrible things that had happened to Sierra. Things that had so nearly happened to me. Sierra Brooks had come straight to a nearby hospital from her first night shift 3 months ago. She was badly beaten and bruised, wanting to register an anonymous rape kit. The damage to her reproductive organs was severe, and she had to get stitches. She filed a police report 2 months later, when she failed her probationary period at Proficient Technologies, losing her job, her only way to pay off her medical debt. It was her word against Sam Guilford's, who had expensive legal counsel as well as countless co-workers to vouch for his respectable character. It was just yesterday that Miss Brooks came by to drop all charges against Samuel, said the younger detective. We are currently attempting to track her down and bring her in for questioning. I'm sure you can see how your knowledge of her name gives us cause for concern. The police kept up their line of questioning until someone brought Barnshaw a note. Forensics had drawn up a report on the fingerprints found on the knife, as well as the blood spatter patterns. I was asked to submit some DNA samples to aid the investigation and finally released to go home. At home, exhausted as I was, I couldn't sleep. I had none of my belongings back. My handbag, phone, and even coat were all submitted as evidence. So I turned to my old trusty laptop, hoping that some aimless browsing could help soothe my nerves. My browser was still on LinkedIn from the day before, and I refreshed the page out of habit. A small red icon showed that I had a new message. Sierra had replied to me. Don't worry, sis, I took care of it. Story. When I was a little boy, I befriended a frog who lived at the bottom of the garden. I was 6 years old when my mom and I moved in with Nana. Mom and Dad were always arguing, and sometimes there was hitting, so she took me and left. Nana loved us, but she also loved solitude. I could always tell when I'd ask too many questions or was playing too loudly. So I'd take myself outside, weather permitting, and leave her in peace. That's how I met Solomon. It was many years ago, but this is how 6-year-old me remembers the experience. Mum was at work. Nana had her feet up, smoking a cigarette as she watched morning television. I was playing on the floor with toy cars. I'd received a road mat the previous Christmas, and, despite it now being summer, I still wasn't bored of it. I pushed the cars around the printed city making sound effects. Ben, said Nana, not angry but stern. I looked up, her matter-of-fact expression telling me everything. Sorry, Nana, I said. She smiled and it warmed her. It's all right, sweetheart, but Nanny's trying to watch telly. I nodded. I think I'll go play outside. All right, come here, she said in a cloud of smoke, planting a big wet kiss on my cheek. Don't go near the pond, remember? I won't, Nana, I said as I wiped my face. One thing about living there was I had no friends. There were no kids anywhere near our house. I had started primary school, but the few kids I played with there lived too far away, so I had to entertain myself. It was a great garden. Lots of space to run around, roll around, climb trees. There was even a blackberry bush. Nana said I was allowed to eat a few a day, but I had to wash them first because of bugs and bird poo. You also had to be very careful when picking them because they grew on thorny stalks. At the very bottom of the garden was a pond. It wasn't too big, maybe 2 meters wide at most. There used to be fish in it, but when they died, Nana didn't get new ones. Grandad used to like the fish, Nana wasn't too fussed. It had become a bit wild, taken over by algae and water beetles. I had a football that I'd kick around sometimes. After I'd picked and eaten a few blackberries, having washed them under the outside tap, I looked around for it. It was floating on the surface of the pond. Oh no, I said to myself, like it was the end of the world. I looked back at the house and pictured Nana engrossed in her programs. I decided that she would never know. It was too far to reach by hand with my little arms, but a long stick would help. There were plenty of those to be found, so I grabbed one and stood about a foot away from the edge of the pond. It had a kind of swampy, humid smell to it. There were sections where the algae separated, and there was an abundance of life to be seen. Lots of tiny creatures swimming, wriggling, squirming. Very few kids have the ability to think logically, or that's my excuse anyway. In hindsight, I should have just laid on my front to take away any danger of falling in. I think in my head, I didn't like the idea of my face being too close to the water. It looked kinda gross. So foolishly, I tried to reach it by bending over and stretching my arms. And that's when I toppled over. Up to that point, I'd never been to a pool. I'd never even been to a beach and paddled in the sea. The biggest expanse of water I'd ever been in was the bathtub. I couldn't swim. The most frustrating thing about that was how close the edge looked as my head tried to stay above the surface. My legs kicked out, my arms flailed. It's crazy how quickly your energy drains. I tried to scream for Nana, but I kept swallowing mouthfuls of stagnant, lukewarm water. I panicked, my head dropping below the surface. I'd emerged briefly, feeling clumps of algae stuck to my face before going back under. Eventually, it went dark, and then it wasn't again. I was choking up water laying a few feet away from the pond, soaking wet. I took in long, deep breaths as I stared into the bright blue sky. I closed my eyes and started to feel tears coming on. Then came a voice. "Don't cry, little one." It sounded like a man, but it wasn't a deep voice like my dad's. It was soft and kind. It reminded me a little of my teacher, Mr. Woods. He always sounded cheerful. I turned my head from side to side, perched on my elbows. Down here, there was a frog sitting on my chest, softly croaking. Just a normal greenish-yellow frog with mottled skin. Its mouth was kind of upturned into a smile. A water beetle scurried in front of it, and its tongue quickly flicked out to eat it. "Excuse me," it said, swallowing it down. I sat up and it hopped off my chest. "Di, did you just speak?" I asked, confused. It nodded slowly, the pale skin under its chin inflating like a balloon as it breathed. "I did," it said. "Are you feeling better?" "Frogs can't talk," I said, pinching my arm. It hurt. I wasn't dreaming. The frog chuckled warmly. "Well, technically I'm not a frog. I mean, I am. But that's not what I would have called myself. That's what your kind call me." I lowered my head a little, getting a closer look. "What do you mean, my kind?" "Well, people. Humans. You are human, aren't you?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm a boy." It laughed. "I thought you might be. Do you have a name, little one?" I nodded again. "Ben, what's your name?" "Nice to meet you, Ben. I don't have a name, sadly." I frowned. "Why not?" Its front legs moved up slightly, like a shrug. "It's just not something we do. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only one of my kind who can talk like this. My mother couldn't have given me a name if she tried." "How can you talk?" I asked inquisitively, shifting down lower. I laid on my front and put my hands under my chin. It shook its head. "Sometimes strange things happen in this world that can't be explained. I'm one of those strange things, I guess. If you're the only frog who can talk, that means you're special." Its little mouth turned up at the corners. "That's a very sweet way to put it, thank you, Ben. I can tell that you're special too." I shook my head. "No, I'm not. Everyone who I know can talk." The frog laughed warmly. "Oh, Ben, that's not the only thing that makes something special. You're special in other ways." "Like how?" "Well, maybe you're special because you can hear me?" I looked up to think about it, then nodded. "Maybe you're right. I've never ever heard of anyone who can talk to a frog before. Honestly, I don't think many can." I got a little closer. "Can I touch your skin?" Its mouth opened as it laughed. "Why on earth would you want to do that?" "My friend Henry Collins said frogs feel slimy." "Well, that's just rude," it said. "I'm sure this Henry Collins is slimy himself." I laughed, shaking my head. "No, silly. He's like me. For all I know, you're slimy too," it said. "I'm not, feel." I held out my hand, palm side up, just in front of it. It hopped a little closer, then one of its little webbed feet pressed down on one of my fingers. There was a slight cool sensation. Well, definitely not slimy, it said. See, I told you. Now it's my turn. It sighed. Very well, but be gentle. I'm a lot smaller than you. I will. I stroked its back with my forefinger. It shook its body a little like a happy dog. Oh my, that tickles a bit, it said, laughing. I wouldn't say you're slimy, I said. I'm certainly glad to hear it, said the frog. But you feel kind of wet. And a bit squidgy. It gasped. Well, sorry to tell you this, Ben, but you're a bit squidgy too. I laughed and rolled onto my back. You're funny. The frog shook its head, but smiled regardless. Oh, to be a child. Ben, came a loud voice from behind. It was Nana, standing on the back doorstep with a cigarette. My heart jumped a little as I sat up. Yes, Nana? I told you to stay away from that pond. I looked back. I was a few feet away from it. I'm not that close, Nana. She took a drag and blew a big cloud of smoke. I don't care, get away from it now. Then she went back in the house. Oh dear, said the frog. I might have just gotten you into trouble. I shook my head. No, I did that myself. I was silly and fell in because I was too close. I paused and got lower again. Wait, did you see how I got out? The frog shook its head. Can't say I did, but I'm glad you're all right. I accepted it as just one of those things. I better go, or I will be in trouble. I sat up. Are you always here? It nodded and turned its head to the pond. Yes, that's my home. Please come and see me again sometime. I nodded. Definitely, but I'll have to be careful Nana doesn't see me. It laughed warmly again. I understand. Just to be safe, maybe it's best if you don't tell Nana, or Mum, or even Henry Collins about me. They might not understand. Does that sound reasonable? I nodded. I don't think anyone would believe me anyway. It gave a slight nod. I think you're right. I got up to leave, brushing bits of grass off my front. My clothes were already drying due to the temperature. Ben, the frog said. I looked down. Would you do something for me? I nodded. Sure. I don't think it will be too difficult for you, but I'd love you to give me a name. You mean, I get to decide what your name is? I said excitedly. It nodded. Absolutely. I'd really like that. Unless you're going to call me something silly like Froggy or Hoppy. I wouldn't like that. I laughed. I won't, I promise. Good. Well, next time we see each other, hopefully I'll have a name. I nodded. You definitely will. I'll think really hard about it. I look forward to it. Goodbye for now, little one. I waved. Bye, Froggy, I said, giggling. It shook its head but laughed along with me. Oh, Ben, you really are something else. A few weeks passed. I'd spent plenty of time in the garden, sometimes near the pond too. But I didn't see the frog, and it was a little disappointing. One day I came home from school. Mom couldn't always pick me up, so it wasn't unusual for her to arrange a taxi to collect me. I walked through the front door and could hear sniveling. Mum, Nana, I called. In here, darling, I heard Mum say from the living room. I walked in. Her eyes were puffy and red. She held a scrunched up tissue. What's wrong, Mummy? I asked. She held out her open arms and I accepted them, feeling my eyes fill up. Part of me knew already. It's Nanny, she said as she hugged me. She's gone to heaven, darling. The house felt different without Nana. But no matter how much Mum cleaned around, there always seemed to be the smell of cigarette smoke. It wasn't unpleasant. It offered a strange kind of comfort. It was almost like she was still there. Mum and I were lucky to have the house. It was paid for in full. But Mum still had to work. Sometimes I'd have a babysitter, a nice lady called Sarah, who lived in one of the houses down the road. But sometimes that wasn't an option. I know she felt terrible about it, but my mum would leave me on my own on those occasions. Promise me you'll be a good boy, she'd say. Don't do silly things. Be safe. I'd always promise and always meant it. On one of those days, I was playing in the garden. It had been maybe a month since I'd seen the frog, but I was so happy when I heard his soft little voice. Ben. He was sat around a foot from the edge of the pond. I ran over excitedly. Whoa, slow down, little one, he said. Be safe, remember? We don't want you falling in again. I slowed to a normal pace and nodded, sitting cross-legged in front of him. Sorry. I was excited to see you. He laughed. That's sweet of you, and you don't need to apologize. I just feel it's my duty to look out for you when no one else is around. I sighed and nodded. He looked up at me. Your mom is doing the best she can. She loves you very much. It's all for you. I felt a little tear in my eye and wiped it away. I know. It's just sometimes I miss her, and I miss Nana. The frog hopped closer, then leapt onto my knee. It made me smile. I'm so sorry about Nana, little one. Don't ask me how I know these things, but I can tell you she's nearby in some way. She's a bit mad that you're this close to the pond, but she's happy you've got me as a friend. I cried, but they were mostly happy tears. Dry your eyes, little one. You've got a big job to do today. Do you know what? I shook my head. I've already tidied my room. I washed up my cereal bowl. I picked up my cars from the floor. The frog laughed. No, I'm not talking about boring jobs like that. This is a very, very important and meaningful job. Tell me, I said excitedly. You need to do me the honor of naming me. I took in a big breath. Oh yes, and I name already. A good one. Its little mouth smiled again. Oh my, I can't wait to hear it. My Nana and I used to watch a particular film together, quite a lot. As a kid, I loved it. I need you to remember that. I was a kid. Because it's a bad film. But kids aren't as critical and cynical as adults. They can see past the flaws and focus on the best bits. That's my excuse anyway. King Solomon's Mines. Not only a shameless Indiana Jones ripoff, but shockingly bad all around. It was my Nana's favorite film, mainly because she thought Richard Chamberlain was so handsome. Sometimes it got a little inappropriate, but being a kid it would go straight over my head. I loved your grandfather, but the things I'd let him do to me. Little did we know back then that my Nana would have never stood a chance. I loved the film for very different reasons, not only because it was our film, but for the sense of adventure. I didn't understand a lot of it, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. At the time, it seemed like the only fitting name, and it would honor my Nana's memory too. Solomon, I said with a smile. I'm naming you Solomon. The frog looked at me curiously, turning his head from side to side. Solomon. Then it smiled. It's perfect. I clapped my hands. Yay, I'm so happy you like it. I never doubted you, he said. I'm proud to call myself Solomon. So now, if anyone asks what your name is, you can tell them. He nodded. I can indeed, though I don't think that opportunity will come up very often. You're still the only thing I've ever spoken to. I gently stroked his back with my finger, and he closed his eyes with a smile. Do you think you'll ever talk to anyone else? He looked up at me. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever meet anyone else special enough. A few days went by and seeing Solomon was a given. I was happy to have him as a friend, and I appreciated that he didn't always treat me like a child. He'd tell me things as they were, truths that most adults would hide or sugarcoat. But I always felt he had an underlying responsibility to look out for me too. I was a child, and I could act like one. One day we were chatting about school. I was laying on my back, and Solomon sat on my chest, like the first day I met him. He cut me off mid-sentence, tapping his little webbed foot. He turned his head to face the house. Sorry, little one, something's not right. I perched up on my elbows. What is it, Solomon? I could see a change in his expression. He looked concerned. He had this amazing ability to show emotions like we do. Ben, someone's coming. Someone you'll recognize. I need you to know that whatever happens right now, you'll be safe. Do you understand? I sat up, and Solomon leapt onto the grass. You're scaring me, Solomon. I don't mean to, little one. It might get scary, but believe me, you'll be safe. My breathing started to get heavier, and I felt butterflies in my stomach. Solomon hopped closer and rested a foot on my hand. Look at me, Ben. I looked down. My breathing stuttered. Do you trust me? My lips trembled a little, but I nodded. I did trust him, as much as I trusted my mum or Mr. Woods. Good boy, he said. I heard a loud noise come from inside the house. It made me gasp. Remember, you'll be safe. I'll always be honest with you. But you need to go see who it is. I sniveled a bit and nodded, standing up slowly and turning to the house. I started walking. I'm here, little one, he called from behind. I walked closer to the house, hearing the sound of furniture moving around. Every now and then, I heard an expletive. I did recognize the voice. It was my dad. I hadn't seen him since we moved into Nana's house. I didn't want to. He wasn't nice to Mom. I walked into the back door and through the kitchen, following the sounds of disturbance. They took me to the living room where he was rummaging through drawers. It took him some time to notice I was there. He jumped when he saw me. Jesus fucking Christ, Ben. My hands shook a little. I didn't like it when he used bad words. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice wavering. He shook his head. Hello to you too, boy. Where's your mother? She was at work. I couldn't lie and say she was home, so I said nothing. He laughed. She's not here, is she? The worthless bitch left you on your own. That's negligence. Leaving my fucking son unsupervised. Who does she think she is? Stop saying bad things about Mum, I shouted, my whole body trembling. She's got you fucking wrapped around her little finger, hasn't she? He started to step closer. I backed up. What lies has she been feeding you, huh? Turning my own son against me. She didn't tell me anything, I cried. I heard the things you said. I saw what you did. He shook his head and grinned in a sarcastic way. Right. Well, you're a little kid and have a wild imagination. She's twisted it. I didn't do shit. I slowly stepped back through the hallway as he edged closer. Anyway, I heard the mother bitch is 6 feet under. There's gotta be some cash around here. That Scrooge hated spending money. Unless it was for a pack of John Player specials. Ha. I shook my head. There's nothing. He smiled. Well, I'll just have to keep looking on my own then. There's nothing, I shouted. Stop saying bad things, get out. The phone was on a little table by the staircase. It was just behind me. I ran to it and started dialing 999. It was a rotary dial, and each 9 took forever to make its way round. I'd barely managed 2 before he snatched it out of my hand. You little shit, he sneered, pushing me back against the staircase. What the fuck do you think the police are gonna do? They'll take you away. Is that what you want? I started crying and hit out at him, but he just laughed. I hate you, I sniveled. I wish he wasn't my dad. As if by magic, the sound of sirens could be heard in the distance. It was enough to spook him, his head turning towards the front door, then back to the phone. No, it couldn't have. That's not possible. It was a miraculous coincidence, but he fell for it. I just stared at him, shaking. You know what? I bet you're not even mine anyway. Your slut mother couldn't keep her legs shut. He backed up to the front door and opened it. Yeah, there's no way a little cunt like you is mine. He left and slammed the door behind him. The word he used was genuinely new to me, so it didn't have the desired impact. It confused me, but I figured it wasn't very nice anyway. My trembling legs carried me down to the bottom of the garden. Solomon was there. He hopped closer as I got near the pond. Are you all right, little one? He asked. I nodded, but fell to my knees and cried. He didn't hurt you, did he? I shook my head. Number, I believed you. It was scary, but I believed you. He patted his little foot on my knee. You're a very brave boy. When Mum came home, I had to explain to her what had happened. She panicked and held me tighter than she ever had before. If anything good came from it, it's that she told me she would never leave me alone again. I helped her clear up the mess Dad had made. I asked her if she was going to call the police, and there was a flash of consideration in her eyes. But she decided against it. That night when I went to bed, it started to rain. I could hear it tapping against my window. I always loved that sound. It was comforting. It hadn't rained for weeks, which was strange for the UK. I awoke late. A sudden bright flash emanated from behind the curtains, followed by a loud crack of thunder. It startled me. I've never been afraid of a storm, but it took me off guard. It must have been what woke me up. I opened my curtains just enough to see the rain coming down hard. Then I watched in awe as the forks of lightning spread across the night sky. I blinked hard as the next crack of thunder struck, laughing to myself. As the next flash came, I looked down to see Solomon's pond rippling. I thought about how happy he'd be swimming around in the rain. There came a loud crash from inside the house. Then I could hear muffled voices. I jumped down from my bed, my room illuminated briefly with the next sheet of lightning. I knew the thunder was coming, but it still made me flinch as I crept closer to my door. I pulled it open just a little and listened closely. My mom was talking downstairs. No, shouting. Then came the voice that my heart already knew was responsible for it. My legs felt like jelly as I quietly walked across the landing and held on to the banister, looking down. A flash of light spread across the floor, then a loud scream mingled with the rumbling thunder. It filled me with dread. I heard my dad shout more horrible words. Then I saw something that I'll never forget. My mum slowly came into view. She was crawling on her belly, and the back of her head was thick with blood. Her blonde hair clumped together. "Mum!" I screamed, and her face slowly turned upwards. Her eyes briefly met mine. They were wide with horror. Her mouth opened. She was trying to say something. Then she collapsed. As I started to cry, my dad came into view. He was holding a hammer, the head of it a glossy dark red. He looked up and sneered as the lightning struck again, and the crash of thunder was like a starting gun. I ran back into my room as I heard my dad on the staircase, slamming the door shut. There was a chest of drawers just to the side, and, being young and stupid, I thought I might be able to push it over to stop him from getting in. The reality was, it didn't move an inch. He burst in, making me scream. "Time to be with your whore, mother," he snarled, swinging the hammer down. I managed to duck out of the way, and it smacked into the side of the drawers. I was on my hands and knees crawling to my bed. I wanted to go underneath it, like it would fool him. That silly childish logic again. I didn't get far though. He picked me up by the scruff of my Thomas the Tank Engine pajamas. He held me up by one hand, the other holding the hammer high above. The lightning revealed strands of blonde hair matted to the head with blood. He grinned in such an evil, hateful way. "You know how I know you're not really mine? I have no problem with bashing your tiny little skull in." I grabbed onto his wrist for support. His clenched fist was just in front of my face. I wanted to try and bite it, but I knew I couldn't reach, so I did the next best thing. As the hammer rose higher, I kicked out as hard as I could with my left foot. I got him good between the legs. The pain I felt in my bare toes was excruciating, but it paid off. He dropped me and fell back, groaning as he let go of the hammer and held his crotch. But of all the places he could have rested, it had to be against the door. I jumped on my bed and threw my curtains open, scrambling to open the window. My dad was moaning behind me. "You little fucker," he said. It was a pitch higher than normal. The window opened outwards, my face splashed with rain. I looked down and could just make out the roof of the little extension that was part of the kitchen. The lightning gave me an even better look. It didn't look like too much of a drop, but it was scary enough to make me hesitate. "You're dead, boy," he screamed, lunging for the hammer and then throwing himself on the bed. I screamed and hung backwards from the window, my hands gripping onto the ledge. The rain came down hard on my face, but I could make out his blurry outline. The flash in the sky showed him looming over me, and as the next thunderclap came, the hammer came down. It caught my wrist. I barely had time to acknowledge the pain, then I was falling. I hit the roof feet first, toppled over, then rolled down the slightly slanted tiles until I met the edge. I tried to cling on to something, but my hands wouldn't grip, slipping with the combination of water and slimy rooftop moss. I hit the back garden hard, knocking the wind out of me. If it hadn't been raining, it might have been worse. The sodden grass somewhat cushioned my fall. That being said, I was frozen for a good few seconds as I tried to catch my breath. As soon as that was under control, that's when I really started to notice the pain in my wrist and toes. I managed to roll over and get to my feet. The back garden was darker than the house, but every flash helped me see the way. I held my wrist to my chest, supporting it with my other hand, and limped in the direction of Solomon's Pond. My tears were indistinguishable from the rain. My body was as wet as it had been on the day I met Solomon and almost drowned. My dad's voice roared from somewhere behind me, making me take in a sharp breath. "I'm coming for you, boy. No one will recognize you when I'm done crushing your face." I darted into the greenery on my left, ducking down. I crawled in, wincing as I put pressure on my bad wrist. I didn't stop until I felt a sharp pain on my right shoulder. It was a thorn. I was in one of blackberry bushes. I sat up and turned around, pulling my knees up to my chest for comfort. Then I slowly rocked myself as my lips trembled. When lightning struck, I saw my dad looking around the garden. The hammer was constantly raised above his head. He poked his head inside bushes, looked behind trees. He smashed the windows of the little garden shed we had, and was adamant he'd found me, screaming with anger when he realized I wasn't inside. "Get your fucking arse out here now." Every crack of thunder made me jump like I wasn't expecting it. My dad turned his head to the sky and roared along with it, like a taunt and intimidation. I closed my eyes tight and continued to slowly rock. As my dad started to move over to my side of the garden, there appeared to be another miracle, the second of the day. The storm must have been testing the electricals of the house, and something triggered the fuse box. Most of the lights went out. It got his attention. "Gotcha!" he yelled, and ran up the garden. The next flash revealed he'd gone back in the house. I slowly crawled out of the bush and got to my feet, heading left and limping the last few steps to the pond. I was exhausted, and in more pain than I'd ever experienced before. But hearing Solomon's voice made everything feel better. For just a moment. "Little one." I couldn't see him at first, but I could tell I was close to the pond by the sound of the rain as it hit the surface. With a flash, I saw him there on the edge. I fell to my knees and collapsed to my side. "Solomon," I cried, reaching out with my good hand. I held it upright, and he hopped onto it with a croak. "Little one, we don't have much time." I took in a stuttered breath. "He killed my mum," I cried. "He killed my mum, Solomon." He patted my hand with one of his webbed feet, shaking his head. "No, Ben. In time, she will make a full recovery." I sniveled. "How do you know?" "Because I'm special, remember? I also know you've broken 2 of your left toes, and your left wrist is fractured." My jaw dropped. My mouth splashed with rain. "How?" "I just do, little one. Your mother will be fine. Trust me." I bawled, but it was mostly relief. I believed him. "He's still here, Solomon. He's trying to get me." He gently tapped on my hand. "I know, little one, but I can help you." I got up to kneel and Solomon leapt from my hand. By that point, I wasn't only shivering from fear, but cold. The rain wasn't letting up. "How?" I asked. "Are you feeling brave?" I shook my head. "Number, I'm scared, Solomon. He's going to hurt me like he hurt Mum." He hopped closer and patted my knee. "I won't let him, Ben, but I need you to be a big, brave boy. Can you do that?" I looked over my shoulder, the house briefly illuminated in a flash. Then the lights went back on. It made my heart jump. "Please, little one, be brave." I turned back and nodded, but I didn't feel brave at all. My stomach churned. "What should I do?" "Something scary. I need you to bring your father to me." I held my bad hand to my chest. "How, Solomon? He'll hurt me before I have the chance." He shook his head. "Not if you're fast and clever. I know you're clever." I started crying again. "But I'm just a little boy." Solomon sighed. "Oh, Ben, I wish I could hug you. You're so much more than just a little boy. Before I met you, I was just a little frog. But you made me special, because you are special. Believe in yourself, little one." I mustered a small smile and stroked Solomon on his back. "We make each other special, don't we?" He smiled and croaked. "Exactly. Now, bring your father to me. You can do it. Fast and clever." I gulped, wiped my nose with the back of my good hand, and nodded. By that point, the thunder no longer made me jump. That made me feel somewhat brave. I slowly stood up, and Solomon leapt to the edge of his pond. Turning, I started walking up the garden. The soft, wet ground squidged between my toes and soothed the broken ones a little. "Ben," called Solomon. I looked over my shoulder. "Thank you for being my friend." I smiled as best as I could under the circumstances, giving him a slight nod. I didn't say anything, but I didn't have to. Solomon and I had a connection. My heart was filled with warmth in that moment, and it spurred me on. I watched as Solomon turned and hopped into the pond with a splash. Then I started preparing for the scariest thing in my life. The back door was open. It was eerily quiet inside. A small part of me had hoped that my dad had left, but I couldn't be sure. I picked up a small saucepan that sat on the counter, my hand trembling. Then I banged it on a cupboard door. "Dad," I called, "I'm here." It didn't take long at all. Within a few seconds I heard heavy footsteps on the floorboards, then he appeared in the kitchen doorway. The hammer was by his side. He grinned. "Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this." He raised the hammer and lunged forward. The first thing I did was throw the saucepan in his direction. That hadn't been planned, but felt like a wasted opportunity if I didn't. It barely touched him, but it was worth a try. I turned and ran, going as fast as I could given my foot injury. It didn't take long to hear a thump and a painful yell, and I allowed myself to look over my shoulder. I'd crushed blackberries all over the doorstep, making it slippery. My dad was laying on the ground, writhing around. It had given me a small advantage. "Fuck you," he screamed, getting to his feet. I gasped as I turned back to face the back of the garden. My little toes were so painful, but I still ran as fast as I had in the 100m race on my school sports day. At least it felt like it, but I knew my dad was twice, maybe even 3 times faster than me. It wouldn't take him long to catch up. The lightning flashed, and it guided my way, showing me what I needed to do next. As I heard my dad closing in, I jumped. I landed on the wet grass with a little slip, but managed to compose myself and kept running. I heard another yell and looked over my shoulder again. My dad was laying on the ground again, swearing. We had a pile of logs in the shed for winter fires, and I had placed some in the garden. "Ben," he screamed, getting to his feet, "I'm gonna start by smashing in your fucking teeth." I turned back and kept running, relying on the lightning again. The thunder roared, but I could still hear my dad behind me. I jumped over another log, but that one didn't stop him. He was looking out for them now. My last attempt at slowing him down was coming up, though he'd need to be closer for that to work. Not that I needed to slow down, I was practically within his grasp. He laughed maniacally, and I could hear the hammer as it swiped through the air. I jumped again, but this time I didn't land straight away. There was a branch sticking out from my favorite climbing tree, and I used it to swing myself a little further ahead. When I let go, it swung back and smacked my dad in the face. He screamed as he came to a halt. "Your eyes," he yelled as I ran with all I had. That was the last of my obstacles. "I'm gonna start by gouging out your eyes." I felt panic rising inside as I sprinted the final stretch to Solomon's Pond. My bad hand clung to my chest, feeling my heart beating hard beneath it. My dad wasn't too far behind now, and there was nothing between us. With a flash of light, I saw the pond, but I saw something else too that gave me a little fright. Protruding slightly from the surface were 2 big glowing eyes. Then they raised up slightly to reveal a wide mouth that was upturned in the corners, like a smile. As the thunder rumbled, I heard a deep croak, and the pale flesh below the mouth inflated intermittently. The eyes were fixed onto mine, and with a final flash of light before I reached the pond, the large head motioned to the sky. I understood. My dad had stopped speaking hateful words, and instead screamed in a constant fit of rage. I took a deep breath and leapt as my toes reached the edge of the pond, landing in the middle of the squidgy wet head. It flicked up slightly to spring me to the other side where I landed straight on my arse. I had just enough time to turn and see my dad's terrified reaction as Solomon emerged from his pond in a geyser of water. Solomon roared and shot out his large tongue. It wrapped around my dad's ankles and pulled him over. I watched in disbelief as he dropped the hammer and tried to claw at the soft ground. Solomon began to retreat back underwater. My dad's screams were more terrifying than the disturbing threats he'd hissed throughout the evening. All I could see was the very top of Solomon's head as my dad was pulled into the water, his lower legs submerged. "Help me!" he screamed, his hands tearing at patches of grass. He turned to look over his shoulder at the face of what was to end his violent attack. My dad was as pale as snow, his nose bloody from the tree. I heard a loud croak as Solomon raised out of the water, then closed his mouth around my dad's waist. He smacked at Solomon's head as he struggled, but I could see him becoming visibly weaker as I heard the sound of crushing bones. Finally, my dad's eyes met mine. I can't be sure, but I think I saw the moment that life left them. They just appeared to be void of any emotion as Solomon dragged him to the depths, and the pond became deathly still. Just a few weeks ago, I happened to be in the area of my Nana's old house. I've long since moved away, as has my mum, who is as fit and healthy as you'd expect a 70-something to be. I pulled up outside and took a deep breath as I looked upon it with mixed emotions. The exterior hadn't changed a great deal. The windows were more modern, that was about it. The front door opened, and a woman came out, walking down the garden path. I shut off the engine and stepped out of my car. "Can I help you?" she asked cheerfully. "Are you lost?" I smiled. Actually, I grew up here. I was just reminiscing." She beamed. "Oh, that's wonderful. You must come inside." I was grateful for her offer, and she took me on a little tour of the house. I was amazed by how different it looked. The last time I'd seen the inside of that house was around the early 90s, where it had the same decor as always. It was very much a family home. There were 2 children's bedrooms, and various family photos dotted around. I got a little lump in my throat seeing my old room. The woman could tell by my reaction that it used to be mine, lightly touching my arm. As we went back downstairs, she offered me a hot drink, to which I politely declined. But my eyes fell onto the kitchen window and the now completely landscaped back garden. "Do you still have the pond?" I asked. She nodded. "Oh yes, my husband keeps koi. Do you mind if I take a look?" She smiled. "Be my guest. I'm making tea. I won't take no for an answer." I stepped outside. There was no longer grass as you left the doorstep, but a modern patio with outdoor furniture. The old shed had been replaced with what looked like a small annex. There was a large trampoline in the center of the garden. 6-year-old me would have loved that. As I approached the garden's end, the pond came into view. It was beautifully maintained. The edge was decorated with rocks. There was even a mini waterfall. I crouched down and watched the koi kiss the shimmery surface. My heart filled and I felt my eyes glaze over, having not thought about that pond for some time. There was a croak to my left. I looked down to see a little frog hop towards me. It made me smile. "Hello you," I said, lightly stroking its back. It made no attempt to hop away. It looked up at me, and I swear its little mouth looked like it was smiling. I got more comfortable and held out my hand palm side up. The frog willingly hopped on top. My heart jumped. I brought it closer to my face and studied it. It had been years since I'd seen Solomon, and with no offense intended, I wasn't sure I'd be able to tell him apart from any other frog. And given their short lifespan, he'd probably be long dead already. But Solomon wasn't like other frogs. He was special, and this was curious behavior. "Solomon?" I said quietly, paranoid I'd be heard by the welcoming woman. It just looked at me and croaked contently. "It's me, Ben." A part of me was preparing for a response. I wasn't sure how adult me would react to that, but there came none. Just a pleasant little expression on its face as it croaked. I let out a little laugh. "Once upon a time, there was a very special frog who lived here. I know it sounds silly, but he was the best friend I ever had. I never got to thank him for what he did for my mum and I, so I'll say it to you. Thank you, Solomon." I felt tears in my eyes as I shook it off, preparing to put the frog down. But it moved closer to my face and placed its little webbed foot on my nose, tapping lightly. The woman in the house seemed genuinely warm, as I'm sure her husband is too. But I knew in my heart, if either of them turned out to be monsters, their children would be safe for as long as they lived here. Story: Anthony Willis. Anthony Willis is sitting in my chair today, a young man who is somehow skinny and fat at the same time and has greasy, unwashed hair. It crosses my mind that maybe I should have the chair cleaned when he leaves. This is his first time, and he is still young, fresh, and stupid. Hopefully, when he leaves my chair, he will be knowledgeable, and maybe, just maybe, have gained a little understanding. "So how old is your child?" "Oh, 2 months. Interesting. Most new parents count the age of a newborn through weeks and days. Makes sense when every week is a new milestone. And most of them don't need a second to think about how long the child has been in their lives when they've only been there for such a short time. Do you have a wife?" "Yes, she's 21. Wow, that's the most defining thing he can think of about her age, not how long they've been married or even her name. Now that I think about it, he didn't mention his kid's name either. or even if they're a boy or a girl. Of course, I already know it's a girl, because I read his file before he came in. How are they? Now he's fidgeting in his chair. Interesting. Good. They're pretty good. Pretty good? So descriptive. And he actually broke eye contact with me to say that. This guy is a horrible liar. Thank God. He'll be so easy to break. Yes, but we're not here to talk about them, are we? He brings his eyes back to me and sits up when he realizes that the small talk is over, and it's time to get down to business. We're here to talk about you. So how are they in relation to you? I must have caught him off guard. He's uncomfortable. He's actually stretching his arms out and placing his hands behind his head in a subconscious attempt to take up more space. Typically, in a human male, this means they are either intimidated or trying to impress someone they are attracted to. Something tells me it's not the latter. After a few seconds of painful silence, I decide to help him out. Let's just start with your wife. Would you say you have a good relationship with her? I'm leaning forward, eyebrows furrowed, hands together on the table. It seems like the more attention I pay to him, the more awkward he becomes. It's delicious. Yeah, well, it's okay. God, this guy doesn't want to talk. That's fine because I've dealt with a lot worse. I have a lot of baddies come through this room and sit in my chair. So far, I've broken them all. Do you ever have arguments or disagreements? Now I've got him. People who are on the brink of divorce or murder will more times than not tell me that their marriage is okay. I think that people have a very hard time revealing things like that to strangers. We've been conditioned, after all, to slap a band-aid on a bullet hole and a smile on our face during hardship. Especially marital strife. Well, yeah, we do. We do argue. What do you argue about? He's looking away from me again. I think this time he's trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. Lord forbid a man were to show any emotion. He gives a tiny chuckle that looks like it took a lot of effort to get out. Everything, really. Everything? That doesn't sound okay. That sounds miserable. Yeah, miserable. It can be, actually. Ever since she got pregnant. He's still not looking at me. In fact, he is trying so hard to avoid eye contact. He has his face pointed almost completely away from me. That painting of a plant on the wall must be extremely compelling because many of the people who have sat in that chair have spent quite a bit of time staring at it. Funny, because I always thought it was just a dumb painting of a plant. How have things changed between you two since she got pregnant? More fighting. A lot more fighting. Now he has gotten to the point where, instead of spreading out, he is starting to take up less space. He's gripping his thighs and sitting upright. What do you fight about? Try to be specific. He's moving his hands up and down his thighs now. God, he just can't stop fidgeting, can he? Just stuff. Like, I don't even know. It's always something. Every time I walk in the door, there's something wrong. Like, I've done something wrong. I just can't do anything right. Do you help with the baby? Man, I try to. So now he's calling me man? Looks like I'm already breaking down walls. But it's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to be able to make it stop crying. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. So now the baby's in it? And she's breastfeeding, so it's not like I can help with that. And she never wants to just let it cry. She thinks it's our job to just jump up every time that it makes a sound and find out what's wrong. And I'm just like, won't she get spoiled like that? The more upset that he gets, the more fragmented and confusing his sentences are. But we've had one advancement. He referred to his baby daughter as she instead of it. So would you say you have different parenting ideals than your wife does? Oh yeah. He's looking me in the eyes now and nodding furiously. Sometimes I'll get mad and I'll be like, so what? Let the damn kid cry for a bit, and then she'll just lose it. Lose it? Oh, yeah. Now he's mimicking my behavior by leaning forward and using hand motions. Suddenly I'm his best friend. Tells me I'm a bad dad. Tells me she hates me. I hate it when she says that. Because you love her? Because it fucking pisses me off. His reaction is almost explosive, but I've dealt with worse, so I don't react. Because you love her? Yeah, I guess. He mumbles. What about your daughter? Do you love her? Of course I do. I mean, she drives me batshit, but she's still my kid. I just don't think she should be treated like the Queen of England, you know? Oh yeah, I know. I know all about you, Anthony Willis, and I know exactly how you feel about your wife and daughter. Does your wife call you names or put you down when you fight? Yeah, lazy bastard, fat ass, dumb ass, deadbeat. Like she thinks it's my fault I can't get a job in this shithole economy. I'm not applying myself. How long has it been since you held a job, Anthony? I already know the answer, but I ask anyways, just because I want to see him squirm. It's been like a while, maybe a few months. Suddenly he's not looking at me anymore, and he's leaning back in his seat like he thinks if he gets far enough away, the question won't hit him. Or maybe that I won't hear him. But I don't have to hear him because I know why he's really sitting in my chair. So, does your wife work? No, of course not. She can't work, cause of the baby, right? She quit her job like a couple months before the baby was born. Isn't that a load of shit? She just gets to prop her feet up all day while everyone rushes around her like she just gave birth to baby Jesus, and then they all scream at me to get a job, like it's just that easy. If neither of you work, then how do you support yourselves? Of course, I know the answer to this as well, but it's very important that he says these things out loud. It's the only way I'm going to lead him to the truth. Her parents, you know, they've got a little money, I guess. We sleep in the spare bedroom, sometimes. Sometimes I just sleep on the couch, because I don't feel like fucking dealing with it. Sometimes I just want to get a full night of sleep without that kid waking me up, you know? Yes, Anthony, I know. I know all too well. She insists on having the baby sleep in the bed. I don't see why she can't just put the crib in the bathroom or the living room, and then just let the baby cry for a little bit. Even for just a few hours if it means we'll get some sleep, you know? But no. No. I need a full night of sleep sometimes, you know? What about your wife? Does she ever get a full night of sleep? What does she need it for? What does she do all day? She's always either sleeping, watching television, or just completely glued to that baby. But then she complains at me that I should be doing dishes and making dinner, even though I literally spend hours every day on the internet searching for jobs. But as soon as I try to take a break, you can guarantee she's gonna come in and start screaming at me. I think it's funny that a few moments ago, he wasn't even speaking in full sentences to me, and now he's spewing paragraphs. He's not uncomfortable anymore. He's still fidgeting though. He keeps his eyes on me, but his hands are traveling all over his body like he's covered in ants. Guilty conscience, Anthony? Living with your in-laws must be stressful for you as well. I'm trying to hit all the pressure points. How worked up can I get him? And what can I get him to confess? Man, you don't even know. I know, Anthony. I know all about it. But I want you to tell me anyways. Her dad? The dude fucking hates me. Like, hates my guts. He is constantly telling her to leave me, and he really wants to kick me out. Or kill me, probably. And then her mom is just a bitch. Just a straight-up bitch. She doesn't like cussing. Doesn't like drinking. Or smoking. Or anything except for her grandbaby. She treats that baby like it came from God. But me, the man who made the baby, she treats like shit. Go figure. Do you fight with her parents? Yes and no. Like, they won't say anything to my face. They just say it to her. And then we end up fighting because of it. Do you get angry? My voice is so low now, it's almost a whisper. I'm leaning forward, preparing for the pounce. Who wouldn't? How angry? Well, sometimes his voice is getting lower as well. I hear that baby, that damn baby screaming, and I swear to God, I want to kill her. He's holding his hands in front of himself now, with his fingers clenched. The tendons in his hands are sticking out, and I can see veins under his transparently pale skin clearly. So what do you do when you're angry? I've already got him. He'll answer any question I ask him, but I still want to lead him into his own realization. Also, I'm not done toying with him yet. I throw things, break things. Her mom doesn't like for me to get drunk, so sometimes I just throw empty bottles and break them when they're not home. I slam the doors, I punch the walls, kick the walls. I punched a hole in our bedroom door one time. I can't help it. It's really hard, you know? Being a man, but being treated like a lil kid. I just want a little fucking freedom. How does your wife react? When you go into a rage? Oh, you know, all scared and shit. Like she actually thinks I'm gonna hurt her. She gets all freaked out. One time she told me that if I laid a hand on her, then her dad would shoot me. Dude, at this point, that fat, old man can go ahead and do it. It would be a fucking blessing right now. And what about the baby? Have you ever hurt her? God, no, of course not. I've screamed at her before, told her to shut up. But all parents get frustrated. It's actually supposed to be normal to get frustrated sometimes. But I get treated like I'm a monster or something. Sometimes when she's crying so fucking loud, it's like I just can't take it anymore and I have to punch something. Like the wall? Or the door? Yeah, like that, you know? Or what about the lamp? Do you sometimes smash the lamps? Sometimes, yeah. It's like I just want some fucking sleep. And sex. This is really hard to admit, especially for a man. But, you know, we haven't fucked since before she gave birth. She doesn't understand because for her it's not as big a deal. She doesn't even take one single second to think about how that affects me. Especially since I can't really jerk it more than maybe once a day since we have absolutely no privacy. I have to hide in the bathroom like I'm a kid again. It's humiliating. By this point, I'm feeling borderline rage. But I've learned how to hide it very well. My face remains practically expressionless, although underneath I'm tensing up for the kill. Think about the last time you argued with your wife. What was it about? At first it was because I wanted her to actually show me that she loved me, you know? Like put the baby down for 2 goddamn seconds and pay attention to me for once. Oh, she didn't like that. Of course she didn't like that. How dare I imply that I'm a human being with needs, right? By needs do you mean sex? Not exactly. I'm just a physical person, you know? Love languages and shit? Well, I'm physical. I like to be touched. You know, initiate a kiss or something every now and then. If it leads to sex, it does, but it doesn't have to. But, at the very least, she could at least try. She would always complain that if she tried it would hurt, but, like, how the fuck is she going to know if it will hurt this time, if she won't at least try? Once you get this guy talking, he could go on forever. I could get him to spill his entire life story to me right now if I wanted to, but I don't. I just want one thing and I'm getting closer and closer. What happened next? I don't remember too well, to be honest. Now he's acting like I'm his good buddy. He leans back in the chair and stretches. Talking shit about his wife seems to be making him more confident. Men like him love to talk shit. And when they actually meet someone who will sit there and listen to it, without kicking their ass, they eat it up. The hardest part of my job is pretending like I'm not disgusted by men like him. You left the house, didn't you? You were quite angry? Man, angry doesn't even cut it. I was pissed. I think I did leave. Maybe I went to a bar or something? I must have gotten real shit-faced because I can't remember anything. Can't or won't. I have to speak slowly and enunciate each syllable to keep from screaming. What does that mean? Let me help you out. You didn't go to a bar. You went to a gas station. You bought a lot of beer. You drank a lot of beer, all by yourself in a gas station parking lot. Then what happened? I went home. His poor, stupid brain is going into overdrive now. I think for the first time, he's actually starting to question where he is, and maybe who the hell I am. But there's no time for that, and he wouldn't understand yet anyways. I have to keep him on track. We're nearing the breaking point. Yes, you went home. Now focus on remembering. I'm leaning so far over the desk now, I'm practically laying on it. My eyes are stuck on his so hard he doesn't dare look away. I have to keep him focused. Her parents were still gone. I was really happy about that. I couldn't stop thinking about how lucky I was. But then I was really mad. Why were you mad? Because the fucking door was locked and I didn't have a key. And I was pounding on the door and yelling and she wouldn't come and open it. She was purposefully not letting me into my own house. It's not your house, Anthony, but that's not important right now. He's making progress. So how did you get in? Oh, easy. He looks down at his bloodied right hand. I broke the window on the door and just reached through and unlocked it. It was really simple. And I was so drunk that it didn't even really hurt. And your wife? She was inside? Yeah, I think so. He was still looking at his hand like he just couldn't comprehend. I can't let him finish the puzzle yet. He needs to put the pieces together in order. Anthony, your wife, what was she doing? What did she do when she saw you? She started fucking screaming, loud, telling me to stay the fuck away from her. Oh yeah, then she tells me, guess what? Her parents are at the police station. They're trying to get me put in jail. Over a tiny punch, like, not even half force. And what did you say? I told her that if I was going to jail, she was going to the hospital. So she fucking runs like a little bitch into her parents' room and locks the door. I can hear the dumb bitch through the door. She's on the phone saying, "Oh God, he's gonna kill me, help me, oh God." I'm mad, so I start kicking the door. I'm really only trying to scare her, but then the door breaks. And next thing I know, there's a gun pointed at my face. She's pointing a gun at me, but she has the nerve to call the cops on me? I wasn't even afraid though. I mean, I knew she wouldn't do it, you know? There's no way she has that much courage. So I just start walking forward, and she's walking backwards, and crying, and saying, "Don't make me shoot you." So you know what I did? I walked right up to her, I took the gun, and I held it to my chest. And I just said, "If you're gonna do it, fucking do it." And you know what she did? She threw the fucking thing on the ground. And then she's just crying and saying, "Please don't hurt me. That bitch was gonna shoot me. Can you believe it?" He's no longer on the line between crying and laughing. He's playing hopscotch with it. But she didn't shoot you. She couldn't do it. The game is over. Anthony Willis will be leaving my chair and taking his filthy, greasy hair with him. He won't be leaving a better man. It's simply too late for him. But maybe I can rid the world of his stench once and for all. Maybe I can properly finish the job he left half done. No, she couldn't. She was too sweet, too kind, too babying, too scared. Hell, I don't know, but she made a fucking mistake. I saw some bright lights. Yep, she had called the fucking cops on me. She had denied me sex like I was fucking unworthy, locked me out of my own house, pulled a gun on me, and then called the cops. And of course, who are the cops gonna believe? Not me, for sure. They always take the chick's side. Always. Probably because they think she's gonna bone him, you know? No, Anthony. I don't fucking know. A shoulder to cry on becomes a dick to ride on, as they say. What did you do to your wife, Anthony? Well, I thought, you know what? Maybe I should show her what it's like to have a gun shoved in her face. So I grabbed it off the floor and pointed it at her. And then, I don't know, I was so drunk. Yes, you do remember. You remember exactly what you did. I remember she screamed or something. The cops were banging on the door. It scared me. Say what you did. Say it. I realize that I'm no longer sitting and I can't calm myself down enough to sit back down. I'm going to break him. He looks at me with tear-filled eyes. A pathetic and ugly look for him. I was just so scared. No, Anthony, she was scared. I think there was some kind of accident. Like, she fell. His veiny, bloody hands are on his face now. They weigh down his skin and make his eyes look saggy and inhuman. No accident. What did you do? I think he's rocking now. The truth is fighting him hard. It's fighting to come out and be free, and I think that very soon, he will be defeated by it. I think I shot her. Shot who? Who was she? I'm walking across the floor now and then, standing over him. I want to hit him, but I know it would be pointless, so I fight him the only way I know how. My wife. Her. No, Anthony. Her name. What was her name? Oh God, what's happening? Where am I? Who are these people? He tries to rise from my chair only to find that he is bound, but not by chains. Why can't I leave? Why can't I stand up? This is my last question, Anthony. Just answer it, and I will answer your questions. I'll tell you everything. What was her name? He curls up his knees and hides his face in them like a tired child. I can't say it. You have to say it, or you won't ever leave this room. You won't ever leave this chair. Please don't make me. Please. He's openly sobbing now, and I can't help but remember how he felt towards his sobbing, pleading wife. You cannot leave unless you say it. There's no other way. This is the toughest stretch, but I know that I've already won. All I have to do is keep pushing. He's so close to breaking. His wailing stops, and he is calm for a few seconds. He breathes deeply a few times, and I allow him this reprieve. When he looks up at me with bloodshot eyes, I know there's no need to prod him more. The truth is bubbling its way up to the top. The silence is thick and heavy and suffocating, which I know will make it all the more relieving when it is broken. Priscilla. My wife's name is Priscilla. The words come out flat and emotionless. I wonder if this is the same way he looked when he pulled the trigger. Her name was Priscilla. I correct him. Standing up, I walk away and sit back down in my chair across the table from him. It's time to answer some questions. Your name is Anthony Willis. You died when you were 23. This is the house that you killed Priscilla and yourself in 10 years ago. These are the people that live here now. You can see them, but they can't see you or hear you. They have a message for you. The young couple sitting on the other side of the room are watching with wide eyes. I know that they can't see or hear him, but the goosebumps on their arms and panic in their faces tell me that they can sense him. One of them is gripping the other's arm, so hard I can see pale fingerprints in their arm. Anthony is sitting in the chair and finally looks like what he is, dead. His eyes are flat and detached, his mouth hanging slightly open. They want you to know that this is their house now, and you are not welcome here. You never were welcome here. It's time for you to stop breaking their lamps, kicking holes in their walls, and terrorizing their children. That's why I'm here, to give you this message and to enforce it. He doesn't respond for a few seconds, but I am willing to wait. I have learned that death is a very hard thing to accept, even for those who deserved it. I'm not surprised when he finally starts to fight against his invisible bonds. He is trying so hard just to stand, but I know that his chains are unbreakable. Much stronger people than him have fought them and lost. The chains are made powerful by personal items of his. His obituary, a picture of him and his dead wife at their high school prom, and a picture of his dead wife and their baby daughter. The couple who now own the house are becoming more frightened as he struggles. His presence must be stronger now with all the energy he is exerting. If he keeps this up, they may be able to see his physical presence. No, this is my house. You're not going to take that away from me. You can't make me leave. He is fighting full force now, which is actually stronger than I would have thought when I first met him. No, Anthony, you are going to leave. I pull a lighter out of my pocket, click it, and produce a small flame. Anthony seems to go even paler when he sees it. When I burn these items, you will be released from this world, to go wherever it is you will go. Wait. His voice is high-pitched and panicky. Where will I go? That's for you to find out, Anthony. I'm still alive, so I don't know. I bring the flame towards the pictures in front of me, but he cries out again, and I allow him his last words. Am I going to hell? He asks quietly and looks pleadingly at me. I don't know, Anthony. Why don't you send me a postcard? I like the pictures. I know the couple in the room with me can hear the screaming because they both jump and grow a shade paler. One of them actually screams out loud and acts like they are going to bolt for the door. To my surprise, they find enough courage to stay. I know that I was terrified as well the first time that I heard the wailing death screams of an unwilling spirit being forcefully ripped from this world, but now I find a small amount of pleasure. The world could always use less Anthony Willises. Of course, it's the most horrible people who seem to cling to life the hardest. It might be because they are so terrified of what awaits them on the other side, or maybe it's because they just want to inflict as much pain as possible. Either way, it's not my job to know. It's just my job to get rid of them. Not a job I chose, but the job that was chosen for me. The last remnants of Anthony Willis are fading out of this world in long tendrils of smoke that continue to spark in an unworldly manner. The young couple are holding each other and hiding their faces from the gruesome sight that I have grown so desensitized to. Eventually, the smoke starts to clear, but a musky, sulfurous smell is still lingering in the hazy room. Yes, I'll definitely be having that chair cleaned. The next few moments are silent except for the haunting echoes of Anthony's passing. The couple finally look towards me. One's face is tear-streaked, and they are trembling. The other steps forward and addresses me while never letting go of the other's hand. Is it gone? They ask in a whisper that is barely more than a breath. Yes, he's gone. He won't be back either. Of course, if I were you, I would still keep my eye out for any other occurrences. While uncommon, this was a traumatic death involving more than one person, so I would keep an eye out for the wife just in case. The wife? The one he killed? Their question reminds me that they could only actually hear my side of the conversation. Yes, it's unlikely that she is still here, and even if she is, I don't think she would actually cause you any problems. But if there are problems, don't hesitate to reach me again. Okay, thank you. And the payment? They asked tentatively. I never ask for payment up front because in my experience, any medium who asks for payment up front is a fraud. My assistant will get with you about that. Is there anywhere you can stay for the night? Possibly tomorrow night as well? My mother's house. That's where the children are right now. Why? Is it not Safe yet? They seem so awkward talking about this. They always do. I find that many people, when actually confronted with the supernatural, would rather brush it under the rug and erase it from their minds. I can't blame them, honestly. It's not the kind of thing you can just bring up at a company picnic in casual conversation, and retelling the story around a campfire at night just seems to make light of the situation. His presence is gone, but there is a remaining mist and bad odor that will likely persist until at least tomorrow evening, possibly the next morning even. Some people have found this smell to be overbearing, and some have even had negative side effects due to it. Nothing too serious. Headaches, nausea, lightheadedness, moodiness. Finding another place to sleep for the next 2 nights would be safer. I think that's a great idea. I'll call your mother now. The one who has been crying seems eager to leave this place and return when the memories are less fresh and easier to reconstruct into something tangible. They leave the room quickly, and as soon as the door is opened, the pressure in the dark and musty room is lightened. I don't know what to say. I don't understand this at all. But thank God for people like you. What would have happened if we hadn't called you? I mean, could it have gotten worse? Well, if you had waited too long, I wouldn't have even been able to help. I'm sorry for your family's misfortune, and I hope you are able to move past this quickly. The children may take a little time, of course. The younger they are, the better they seem to be able to remember it for some reason. Even the baby? Especially the baby. She will probably remember this years and years from now, even after you have long forgotten. I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but I have a flight to catch, so I can't stay for much longer. No, of course. Go ahead. Thanks again. I am led to the door, and I feel the familiar rush of fresh air and sunshine and life in general. Mysteries are everywhere, and some may be closer than you think. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next mystery. See you in the next story.